is it Forest in Springfield?
Yes, yep.
How you doing?
Very well. Anyway, am I live?
Yes, sir, you are.
You are live.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Anyway, either the best Turing machine ever.
I wanted to, first, before anything, I want to ask you if you could just touch bases during this program on the Board of Education, Texas Board of Education, and how that's going with the evolution in the schools or whatever.
Yeah.
Also,
Things were really bad, and then they got better, and they got bad again, and now we're waiting. The standards were put together by scientists and teachers, and they were good. And then Dan McElroy and some of the young Earth creationists on the Board of Education got together and said, we want to add in the strengths and weaknesses language, and things were bad. And then after some discussion and voting, the strengths and weaknesses language was removed, and things were good. And then Dan McElroy decided that wasn't enough, so now he's added something to question the strengths and weaknesses specifically of common ancestry. That rider, as far as I know, is still on there. The vote is coming up. For all of you people who give a damn about education, about science education, and you live in Texas, and some of you, even if you don't live in Texas, write the State Board of Education and let them know that you care. Get in touch with groups like Texas Freedom Network, Texas Citizens for Science Education, to find out what, if anything, you can do. It may be as simple as sending an email or writing a letter, because I guarantee you that the anti-evolutionist crowd is busy contacting the State Board of Education to congratulate them on standing up for cultural diversity or whatever.
Diversity
academic
of thought.
freedom.
Academic freedom.
Yeah, whatever nonsense
That's
they're
the most
trying to use.
insidious thing about the whole thing. You know, they are presenting themselves, of course, as being the champions of academic freedom.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, are there
And
links
it's,
on your website?
On the ACA website, there's probably not a link, but I imagine...
TFN.org is the Texas Freedom Network. They're like the top dogs in terms of, you know, keeping an eye on this sort of thing and keeping tabs on how you know, things are going with the SBOE.
TFN.org, you said?
Yeah, TFN.org is the Texas Freedom Network. Good group.
Okay.
Also, there's, I believe, TexScience.org is the website for Texas Citizens for Science.
and you've got blog posts up.
And I
about
do,
this as
and
well.
on the Atheist Experience blog, you know, whenever SBOE stuff, you know, comes up that I think is interesting and worthwhile, I'll do a little post there. And one thing that I did read recently is that the reason the SBOE got so bad, to where nearly half of it, nearly half the membership of the SBOE, is a bunch of right-wing creationists, you know, fundamentalist Christian ideologues. The reason it got that bad is because historically, you know, don't want to sound partisan here, but this just tends to be how, you know, the bowling pins tend to fall. You know, on the Republican side is where the right-wing creationists tend to go, not so much on the Democratic side. But the Democrats in the state of Texas have never really considered the SBOE to be a particularly important election to concentrate their efforts on. They've set their sights higher on more, you know, legislative stuff. So they've kind of ignored the SBOE, and as a result, we now have this SBOE, which has become fodder for late-night comedians. It is really a laughingstock and very shameful. And so one thing that I have read recently is that there appear to be some folks who are about to announce that they're going to challenge, when it comes re-election time, some of the real right-wing stalwarts, like Cynthia Dunbar, who wrote this editorial for the Christian Worldview Network, their website, basically saying that Obama was in league with terrorists, which caused such a furor that even these people who will post anything, there is no limit to the crazy that they will, you know, post on their website. Even they took it down, saying that harms our credibility. When you have when you have the Christian Worldview Network worrying that you are not credible for them, yeah, you're pretty bad. So there may very well be some Democratic challengers.
Yeah, and as Schilling pointed out on yesterday's Nonprofits, you know, even the Pope's science advisor is okay with evolution. And when you find that your views are more backwards than the Vatican's, maybe you ought to rethink a little bit.
Well, I'd like to go on a little bit, if I could.
Yeah, please.
The subject you were talking about before, I'm a firm believer in that the minds of children have been brainwashed through not only indoctrination but by assimilation. And I'm so thankful for people like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, who finally We have people out there. We finally have scientists. I mean, besides Eugenie Scott, which for the past 10 years has been pretty vocal, but now we have some major scientists out there fighting for us. And then we have the internet, which I don't know if you're familiar with Aaron Ra, who is just amazing, and also Thunderfoot. And then we have children, or not children, but people in their young 20s from other countries, all helping to educate people who hook up to the internet.
Yep.
And what an incredible thing. We also, I really feel that we need to begin to start holding ministers accountable and priests, and not even give them any sort of credibility whatsoever. I mean, these people are liars, they're charlatans, they're false teachers, they're false preachers, everything that the New Testament tells you to beware of, and they're out there. I've personally spoken to about 30, because I make it a mission of mine to go out there and find what is in the minds of these ministers. Yeah. And I really have yet to find one.
The problem is proving it.
Oh, if you go and you speak to them about what the tenets of Jesus was supposed to be, such as being truthful and honest, then you get to the core of them. I have one-on-ones with these ministers, and I'll tell you, the vast majority of them do not take the Bible literally, but they don't think that the people can handle it. Oh, and frankly, I'm fed up with that, and I'm angry about that, and I'm angry that I was misled as a child by these people. And so I think that I'd like to call on atheists to, the next time you see a minister, ask them if you can talk to them for an hour. Let them know that we're beginning to get really angry. It is out of control. We don't live in the Bronze Age anymore, yet we're forcing children to think like Bronze Age people in this world of high science and technology. And thankful that we have the internet, and thankful we have people from other countries. Peace.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for your call. Good call, Forrest. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think he's got a good point, but I think that, the thing to do is hold the anger in check, right? And just engage, challenge them on an intellectual level.
We talked about this a little bit at the pub crawl. I had a conversation with some people who were like, oh, I don't like Dawkins too much because he's a little too forceful. Have any of you ever seen Gordon Ramsay? The guy's an ass. On Kitchen Nightmares, the F word, everything else. He is demanding, precise, meticulous, but you love him. He is there for one reason, to create good food, and he's not going to tolerate any half-assness. I'm sure he plays it up a little bit extra on TV. But the thing is, he's not just forthright, he's an outright ass to people in order to get them to appreciate quality, effort. And while Dawkins doesn't come anywhere near that, I appreciate the fact that there are people out there that are willing to do that. Because for every person who has abandoned superstitious thought through an application of reason and critical thinking, there's somebody else who had to take a different route. And one of those viable routes begins with ridicule. I'm sorry, but there are kids on the bus who stop believing in Santa Claus when the older kids tease them about it. That's the trigger that gets them to say, wow, could I really be so mistaken? And what we've done is we've created a society where in general we are kind of hands-off about, it was taboo to talk about religion, and you don't insult people's religion. And now, by the way, we have the United Nations attempting to pass a binding resolution that would pretty much eliminate the rights of individuals to criticize religions.
It's appalling. Absolutely appalling.
If that passes as a binding resolution, not that it really has any teeth, and we talked about this on nonprofits, so I'm not going to go into great detail. If that happens, I guarantee you there will be a special edition of the Atheist Experience that sets out to violate in every way possible that binding resolution, because how dare you sacrifice the very principles that organization was supposed to be founded to ensure, to better the world, by kowtowing to people who'd rather not have their feelings hurt because their particular superstition is being picked on by somebody else.
Yeah, and as Dawkins has taken to pointing out in some of his most recent lectures, our feelings are hurt. We're offended. They're pretty much down to that now. That's kind of all they've got, more or less. And if this binding resolution passes, I will personally write the president and tell him, I think the United States now needs to withdraw from the United Nations.
And we're only posturing by being in the United Nations in the first place,
Yeah,
I'd
it's
say.
sort of, I'd say this, if anything can get me on the conservative side of the not like in the UN, it's something like this.
Well, we've
'Cause this is just
disregarded
beyond.
UN stuff whenever it
Yeah.
suited us anyway.
But this is just, well, it's pure violation of, I think, one of our most precious basic freedoms, which is speech, thought, the ability to engage others with different points of view.